Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today we've got a special guest on the show all the way from the US, New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Kasi as well. We're joined by Srinivasan, Kasi, Head of International HR at Tata Consumer Products. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine, Chris. How are you doing today?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's not too cold, not too rainy, so that's always good. So that's all we ask for in the UK. How about you?
Yeah, it's pretty good weather here, and as the winter sets in and you get closer to snowing, and still not yet closer to that, but yes, it's that part of the year where you have your own challenges in East Coast, but
yeah, we don't have to worry about that.
We are coping with it like we are coping with everything else.
There's nothing we can't overcome at this point. I think we've all realized over the last 18 months how resilient we are. I think we've learned a lot. But before we go any further, tell everyone a little bit more about you personally and your journey to where we are now.
Well, Chris, I have been an HR professional for more than 2 decades, and I primarily work with one large entity called the Tatas. Many people know the Tatas in the world. It's a large conglomerate, $103 billion, now closer to $110 billion. And they work in different industries, and I primarily worked in 2 of the industries. Some of the popular brands to recall, to connect with Tatas, are the Land Rover Jaguar, the Cora Steel, which is now the Tata Steel in UK, and then the Tetley, which is one of the largest tea products in the world, 8 O'Clock Coffee here, the Taj Group of Hotels, the largest hotel chain where I spent significant amount of my career. So I primarily worked in 2 industries, the hospitality and the CPG consumer goods industry. That's where I was a CHRO for quite a long time. And my journey has been all about human resources, looking at global mergers and acquisitions, working on end-to-end life cycle of HR, including DEI and the current challenges of COVID, managing the Great Resignation era that's happening in America, and then very passionate about many aspects of HR, leadership development, talent development, and C-suite synergies and how to drive vision and purpose in the organization. Wow. Organization exists for larger purpose than profits. How to drive vision, how to drive purpose, purpose-driven leadership, purpose-driven organizations are very passionate for me. And that's an area I've been working. And I worked across the globe, so I have a lot of international experience. I worked in India, I worked in UK, I worked in US. And while in the hotels, I've done lots of mergers and acquisition in the Indian Ocean area, in South Africa, in America, and in different parts of the world. So that's my journey on HR, to put it in a nutshell.
And you're not done yet.
Well, none of us get done. We always think we are done with our careers, but then we go through the phase of being there, not being there. And I'm very clear in my mind, I want to be active in the profession as long as I can.
Wow. It's quite, I don't even know where to start there, because 20 years, it's a long time. You've seen a lot. You've been all over, you've traveled all over the world, right? Worked with different cultures, different leaders, etc. Did you choose HR or did HR choose you? Did you plan this? Because it seems...
That's a very interesting question. It was a very conscious choice. I always wanted to be in HR. I started my career many decades back as a management trainee in human resources. I worked for a very short while in the manufacturing sector for, say, a couple of years, and then bulk of my career has been hospitality and consumer branded packaged goods. That's been my journey in the last 8.5 years after the hospitality. But then, yes, I consciously choose HR, working with people, dealing with people. I feel that people is the heart of the organization, and you can't get a more satisfying career than working in HR. And yes, it's a very conscious decision to be in HR.
Oh, really? You're one of the few.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. HR must look completely different to what it did 20 years ago. I've been doing this for 15 years.
Okay.
And I since I was 17, and I've seen a big change. But from your perspective, it must be like a completely different function almost from when you got started.
Yeah, I think we have all seen the evolution of HR from the industrial age to what it is today, and we have seen it like Dave Ulrich talks about the 4-quadrant model. To start with, it is from purely an administrative role to benefits and administration, and to getting people on board and running the ship well, role to HR as business partners, and HR really adding value to the organization. And then I think now we have come to a stage in HR where we truly drive the purpose and vision in the organization. The CEO has to truly partner with HR if he wants to drive a purpose-driven organization, because if you really want to realize the importance of your brand, if you really want to exceed in the business what you're doing, the larger ESG framework, the larger brand reputation with the consumer, I think HR has to play the role, because as long as the employees are not able to demonstrate the behaviors to drive what the larger purpose of the organization and strategy of the organization is, the senior leadership has realized that HR has evolved. And at one stage, as you know, Chris, we were all talking about, does HR really has a right to be at the table?
Yeah, they are the table. They're the head of the table.
Yeah, now truly they are the driving force in my view, and HR truly contributes significantly to the organization and its success.
Yeah, isn't it crazy, right? That only 5 years ago we were talking about HR at the table. HR need to speak the language of the business. But now it's the other way around. It's gone completely 180, and it's like the business needs to understand its people. It's kind of completely flipped. And we've been talking about this for a long time, but I think, again, the pandemic was one of the things that highlighted this. And for the first time,
I would say the pandemic has highlighted, and also the fact that, the evolution of organization itself. I think where do employees truly go these days? It's not the true bigger brands. Apple is a brand and Google is a brand. It's not the true brands that they want to really work with. They want to work with organizations that are ethical. They want to work with organizations that are purpose-driven. They want to work with organizations which really value sustainability and brand reputation, ethics. So the evolution of the organization has a large role to play on the evolution of human resources as a function. Mm-hmm. I think the more and more we realize that organizations exist larger than profit, it exists for a purpose. And if the CEOs, I was reading recently a book on The Heart of Business by Hubert Joly, who used to be the CEO of the Best Buy and in-resident professor today in Harvard. And one can truly realize that CEOs who really want to drive purpose, who really want to differentiate their products, really want to create a sense of pride in the organizations, truly rely on how HR can drive behaviors, values, and achieve that purpose. So I think organizations have evolved. They're continuing to evolve post-COVID with more challenges on empathy, people connect on other areas. And I think as organizations evolve, HR will also evolve, and they will have a much, much larger role to play in the organization.
Do you think that that's also what's driving this great resignation we're seeing, that people are realizing, I want to work for a company that's aligned with my values, my purpose, my why? Do you think
and I think what has amplified it more is the current COVID situation. Why do I need to work, and what's important for me in life? What is that I have to do? Is there a larger purpose that I have to achieve? And nobody expected post-COVID the great resignation story in the United States and in the rest of the world. And at one end, we say that people find it difficult to find employment. Unemployment percentages are monitored right by the president in White House. And then on the other end, you see so many vacancies getting not filled and people truly not looking at it. And when the vaccine was made mandatory, It has even led people to leave the organization because they say that nothing can be mandated on me. There are points of view about it. It's difficult to understand why people would risk themselves. But having said that, from the trends we are seeing at the marketplace, I think there has been a huge shift in the way organizations look at how they exist and how they really want to thrive in an environment like this. And what are the challenges and how HR can truly play a significant role in the process.
How has this then changed the way that you and the team are approaching this?
Well, things have changed a lot. I think in the sense that organizations need to be more empathetic these days. And the challenge you have is that, it also resonates. Recently, I was watching the interview, the podcast between, the HBR author of the HBR review, Adi Ignatius, my batchmate in AMT in Harvard, with Indira Nuvi. And then the great question is, how do you build culture? Do you have to be physically in touch with the people in the organization? You have to sense and feel them? Or can you build cultures in the current day world where it's going to be partially remote and partially physical presence? So I think the challenges are plenty in the sense that we have crossed the challenges to a certain extent. I think early 2020 and later 2020 were the challenge of uncertainty, the challenge of fear, no vaccine, people don't know what this pandemic is all about, and you can't go to work, and the kind of infections and the deaths we have seen in the world, it's really been a huge thing after the Spanish flu, or what they call it as what happened 100 years back. And therefore, having said that, I think the challenge for HR today is you need to be empathetic to people. You need to be technology driven. You need to truly provide them the support. They need a lot of help in terms of getting over the anxiety that they have. And therefore things have improved now with the vaccine and having a clear roadmap in terms of testing and how you should conduct your meetings, what kind of social distancing you should do, what kind of precautions you should take. Things have reasonably improved, but then a lot of new competencies and new challenges have emerged for HR. I would say two key challenges for HR post-COVID that every organization, I'm sure, will agree with me, particularly for the HR professionals and the CEOs, has been empathy and being technologically savvy. That's very, very important now. How do you bring about empathy and manage employee emotions and engagement while you are not in a traditional way in contact with them on the day-to-day? There is no eye contact physically. You are not able to meet them in the meeting rooms. You're not able to express your emotions in person. Everything happens as we are doing now on a Zoom call, on Microsoft Teams and various other ways. And people are recruiting senior leadership teams as well without even meeting the candidate for the first time. Unheard of in the process of recruitment in human resources.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of new things have emerged. We have started looking at things from a different lens. The new normal looks to be far more productive. One argument for it is that things seems to be working much better. People are able to concentrate better, kind of a thing. And of course, in essential businesses like coffee, tea, water, or any other commodity business, the factories have to go on, the production has to go on. And therefore, you have to manage that as well as the remote kind of working functions like sales and marketing and e-commerce and IT and HR.
Kasi, I'm going to have to stop you for a second. You've made so many great points. We have to touch on them. Going back to your previous point earlier, do you think that you can build culture remotely? Because that is a concern.
That's an important conversation. I don't think so. I don't think completely working remote. I think culture is all about driving those behaviors in the employee and getting the larger strategy of the organization realized. I think there are lots of arguments whether you can build culture remotely or you have to be physically present. But I think we have to come to realize the real world scenario of the new normal. There are many organizations that are going to be partial remote and partially physical. Mm-hmm. There are a few service-driven organizations. There will be no choice but to be physically there. My earlier industry where I was, hospitality cannot be remote. It has to be with the physical contact with all the precautions. But I think we need to learn the art of building culture even without being in touch with the employees, and that's the challenge for the leadership, not just the HR.
No, 100%.
How do you drive purpose and how do you drive culture in the organization? And my personal view, I think we're all coming to realize that there is a way to build culture even without being physically in touch with the employees.
Yeah, and that also ties in with your point earlier about leaders in terms of leading with empathy as well. So leading with empathy, the technology perspective that you mentioned, and as leaders and managers, it's been quite a tough time, right? Having to lead, it's hard enough leading a team in person, but then when you have half of your team remote, half in the office, that's a whole nother complexity. Add on top of that, a pandemic, add on top of that, leading with empathy and all the other things. It's a tough time. So what are you doing to help your own leaders in your organization?
I think my view is that it is always in organizations, and particularly for HR and the leadership team, has been about communicate. And you need to really, really push it much harder. Communicate needs to become the mantra. You need to, even if you're doing meetings remotely, you need to do it with the same amount of intensity with which you have been doing. You need to adapt to new ways of building talent. You need to adapt to new ways of, running the business in a way that I'll give you a simple example. In the consumer packaged goods industry itself, there were many companies which were purely depending on the brick and mortar sale of your Walmarts and the Targets and the Publicis and various other places. And 80% of your channel sales were through these multiples. And suddenly the COVID has changed and you were 8-9% through e-commerce and through online channels had to completely ramp up to 30%, 40%. So new challenges have emerged. We have to build new competencies. We have to get new talent on board. And we built an entire e-commerce team remotely and got the key talent on board because that was the need of the hour to immediately increase the sales. More and more people were no longer visiting the brick and mortar store and they wanted to buy everything online. The fear of COVID. Of course, things are changing back now slowly. People are going back and want to see the presence of the brands and products on the aisle. They want to touch and feel and look at it. But it's, the framework changed suddenly in terms of what kind of talent you need, in terms of what kind of approaches you need to take, what kind of hiring processes you need to put in place. How do you ensure the organizational culture and purpose remains intact in an era where people can't meet physically? So yes, there have been a lot of new challenges and people are coping up with the new challenges.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the core skills and competencies that both CHROs and HR teams are going to need to be successful in this, new world of work that we find ourselves in order to be able to provide the value to both the business and our employees and customers, to be honest?
I think this goes back to your earlier comment that you made about, when you asked me whether I came into HR by choice or by accident. And as you see that all the statistics even now shows that a bulk of HR leaders these days come from the business area. They're not professional HR. A certain percentage come from professional HR. I think the new challenges for CHROs and the HR fraternity is try and understand the larger purpose of the business, get to understand the core of the business very fast, and look at the ever-changing landscape of the way businesses are run, and quickly adapt, and to be that strategic partner who can add value to HR. Look at how look at the framework of ESG, and look at the framework of DEI. How do you embed all of them in the HR processes? These were good to know, but not the essentials of the business. But I think now they're becoming. Profit is something an organization has to make. Without profit, organizations don't exist. But profit is not the larger purpose. Look, organizations are looking for purpose-driven leadership. How do you bring the personal values? People are looking at integrating the personal values with the organizational values. So how do you drive your personal values and behaviors to organizational values? How do you truly realize the purpose of the organization? Does the CEO and the leadership team believe in it? So HR has to get a little more deeper. HR, I think the situation has forced them to understand the larger context of business, the larger nuances of the business. And I think the landscape has completely changed. People are no longer looking at talent management as a 9-box kind of an approach. So it is all complete IT driven and purpose driven. And you really need to understand, like you have to understand your consumers, you need to understand your employees. There is no one size fits all approach anymore. So that makes life more complicated for HR.
Do you think this is the toughest time ever to be a CHRO?
I don't know. I won't put it that way. I think this is the most challenging time ever as a CHRO.
Yeah, let's say that. Yeah, challenging.
I'm no longer a CHRO, but I would certainly say that this is going to be a toughest situation post-pandemic and the ever-changing world that CHROs are facing. But I don't know. And we always look for the better. And I don't know whether you will get tougher situation as you go forward. But yes, to answer your question, I would say from what I've seen in the last 20, 25 years of HR as it evolved, I think this is the most complicated and challenging times for HR to really rise up to the requirement of the organization.
But at the same time, on your last point, do you also think it's the most a time where we have the most opportunity to have an impact?
Great opportunity to make an impact. Great opportunity to truly drive. And I was just reading, Chris, about an article about purpose-driven culture in the organization. And one of the questions I've seen, this is a Gallup survey and a Gallup article, and they are saying that how do you bridge the gap between the brand reputation from a customer perspective and the organizational reputation from an employee perspective? He says that CEO needs to play the bridge between a CMO and a CHRO. If a CMO really wants to drive, the chief marketing officer truly wants to drive a purpose-driven brand in the organization, how does he bring that brand to life without the people in the organization exhibiting those behaviors and values to bring that product live in the marketplace? So look at the links between how HR needs to play that intertwining role within the organization to drive. And I think to that extent, the role of HR has become far more complicated and challenging and interesting as well. This is the time that HR could truly intellectually contribute to the organization.
Yeah, no, I agree too. It's very exciting, a lot of opportunity. But at the same time, I've never seen so many CHROs leave the profession than I've seen over the last 2 years. I've been doing this. I speak to leaders every day, and more and more I'm seeing CHROs leave, retire early, etc.
That's it's not true just with CHROs.
No, I know, of course, but I mean,
in the Great Resignation story, we are seeing it at all functions, but it is becoming more pronounced as far as CHROs are concerned, because I think some of them are not able to bear the burnout. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. And like every other employee in organization asks the question, what is the purpose of my existence in this organization? A similar question a CHRO is also going to ask, saying that, what is the larger purpose that we want to drive in our life and in the organizations where we work, and where do you balance it? So that's where the key challenges come in.
Yeah. Have you ever considered not walking away from your particular company, but have you ever considered walking away from HR and trying something different?
Well, I during my tenure in HR for many, many years, I have, for example, when in 2008 and 2009, when you had the entire financial crisis in America, and I was the vice president HR for Europe and America for the Taj Hotels, which is part of the Tatas. And for a brief while, for about 3-4 months, I managed as the general manager of a property itself when we didn't have a GM there. So I love the aspect of doing operational business, welcoming a guest, checking out a guest, looking at his complaint on TripAdvisors and what he didn't like, what he liked. And therefore, that gives you a lot of, I think HR needs to become business leaders. They need to understand the larger context of business, and they need to work in their careers as a part of business. I have not consciously during my career worked in an operational business or leading a business by itself, but there have been occasions where I've on and off supported, being a stopgap kind of a thing. But yes, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm very passionate about HR and irrespective of what I do for the future, HR will remain part and parcel of my life. And I very strongly feel that, the profession has a lot to do and a lot more to give back to the organizations and the community at large. There's a lot of things that one can do as an HR professional. Many HR professionals may not agree with me. That's a different story.
Yeah. Just out of interest, what are your hobbies and passions outside of the office?
Well, the whole problem with human resources is for a very, very long time of your life, you don't have anything outside. The only hobby is going to office and coming back. There was a time in my career when my son was very young. He used to tell me if I'm back home by 7 p.m., he said, "What's wrong with you?"
No way.
I've gone through those scenarios in life, but then I think I'm like many other people. I follow the world economy and look at the socio-economic situation in the world. I'm very fond of looking at world from the perspective of how it is emerging. In terms of sports, I'm very fond of tennis. I don't try. I would, even if I'm not able to watch, I'm able to keep track of what's happening in all the big ones in terms of Wimbledon, French Open, Australian, as well as the Roland Garros in the US.
Nice.
And whenever I find time, I would love to go for a game as well.
You have to come to Wimbledon next time you're in London.
Oh, sure.
Go. It's amazing. You should come. Yeah. What else? Didn't you tell me beforehand you love cricket, right? Or in terms
I love cricket as well. And coming from a country of cricket, India.
You kind of have to love cricket. Like, is it allowed not to like cricket? No, but I mean, in India, like all of my Indian friends growing up, it's like you can't not like cricket and live in India.
I love cricket, and I played cricket at a certain level in my own career, and it's a sad thing that India is out of the World Cup and England very much is reckoning. So
we won't talk about that then.
Having said that, I love the game. I love the traditional version of the game in terms of Test cricket, while the game was evolved into ODI, 50 over to 20 over to Premier Leagues kind of a thing. But I love the traditional Test cricket and the nuances of the game. So yes, I love cricket. I played cricket.
Nice. I want to jump into some quick fire questions, that I ask all of our guests. So these are short questions that we ask every guest. So all 400 guests we ask these questions. So some of them, they're fun, so we can kind of have fun with it. How do you think that your family and your kids would describe what you do for a living?
Oh, well, they say I'm passionate. I do something that I'm very passionate about, but my kid, I don't have kids. I have only a kid.
Oh, sorry, kid. Okay.
So he always says that you are a workaholic. Not a very good comment. And yeah, the family supports what I do because I share the whatever happens at the workplace, not in terms of the confidentiality things, but
Of
the way
course.
things evolve, and you build a lot of. My family would say that there is a huge match between my personal values and what I do with the organization because we have a lot of empathy. I'm a very inclusive leader, so they appreciate what I do,
That's
and they
great.
always feel that HR is a tough profession. That is one thing they
Yeah,
will
they
tell
know. um, this is a bit more of a tough question, I suppose, but what legacy do you say you would love to leave behind for your family?
Values, great values. My son went to the Columbia Business School, and now he works for an organization called McKinsey.
Yeah.
And I groomed him well in life. I've given him the best of the values, ability to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong, and give back to the society around you. Life is all about, being inclusive, being more empathetic, and giving back to the society, and look at, like, organizations have started looking at the larger purpose.
Yeah.
Personally, individuals have to look at the larger purpose of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's precisely the kind of legacy I want to leave, that my wife, my son are able to look at the larger purpose of life. It's not just about making careers and succeeding in careers, but it's about, how do we balance our personal life, professional life? How do we give back to the society and communities around us?
Yeah, love that. Definitely. I think we could all get caught up, right, in the day-to-day and what we do. Who would you say is one person that's had the most impact on your career?
I mean, in terms of the professional career,
Yeah.
I think the person who truly made a lot of impact on me was an expat CEO. His name is Raymond Bixon. He was my CEO when I was in the hospitality industry. A very genuine person, a very natural leader, a leader who gives a lot of freedom for people to grow in the organization, who believes in strong ethics and values. So I think in terms of the various leaders I've seen, he is one person I truly admire. And outside my professional career, I have admired a couple of people. I have admired Mahatma Gandhi for what he did for the country like India, and the ways and approaches in terms of, we are seeing those things repeating now with the BLM movement now, doing things and achieving your goals in a non-violent and in a way that you are able to express your concern and bring it to the light. Mm-hmm. I have admired somebody like Nelson Mandela, and in terms of other corporate leaders, I think one person I admired always was, somebody like Jack Welch from the GE, and the way he could run the organization. He was an inspirational leader, I think.
Yeah. Amazing.
You asked me one, but I gave you a couple.
We've got more than we bargained for. And the very last question, what advice would you give to the HR leaders of tomorrow?
Understand the larger context of the organization. Understand the larger purpose for which organization exists. I think they need to have a deeper understanding of the business, develop the skills to be more empathetic towards people, develop the skills to really bring the larger strategy of the organization alive. I think, as rightly said by Peter Drucker, drive the culture eat strategy for breakfast. So drive the culture of the organization, look at the nuances of driving culture, and be proud about what they are saying. I think what's very, very important for HR professionals, I would advise, is be proud about your profession. Be passionate about your profession. Give back to the company and to the profession, and build a legacy where you would be remembered as a very, very empathetic and a value-adding leader in the organization.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. It means a lot, and I appreciate it as well. I hope you had fun as well. And where can people connect with you if they want to reach out and say hi? Where can they reach you?
Oh, well, they can reach me on my private email ID because now I am a bit on my own. So my email is Kasi Srinivasan at iCloud.com. So they can reach, and they can also reach me through the LinkedIn. And
yeah,
I'm very much on the LinkedIn as Kasi Srinivasan. And any questions or any interactions anybody wants to do, I'll be more than happy to do that as far as my experiences and my background is concerned.
Thank you, Kasi. Generous as always, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best until we next speak, and hopefully I can get to come and see you soon.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.